All right, guys, we are wrapping up that hard-to-watch blowout loss that the San
You can
Antonio
say
Spurs just
awful.
suffered. Okay, awful loss. The San
Yeah, it
Antonio
was pretty
Spurs
awful.
suffered to the Oklahoma City Thunder. 131 to 103. That was ugly. That was a pretty ugly game. It looked like it wasn't going to be there for a minute there. First quarter, things got rolling. Second quarter, the Spurs put a little run in there. They were leading, I think you said, what, 45 to 30 at some point?
They built a 9-point lead in this game. But
45-36. It was
Yes.
7 minutes and 21 seconds remaining in the second
and then
quarter.
from that point forward, it just really fell off the rails.
Yeah, what happened there? There was a 40-point run for the Thunder at some point in time, right?
Something like that.
I think I had it at like a 62 to 28 run over 19 minutes of basketball once the third quarter ended.
Yuck.
I mean, mostly it just they weren't hitting shots. I
Yeah.
mean, look, LaMarcus Aldridge 3 of 10, 0 of 5 from deep. DeMar DeRozan 4 of 12, 11 points. This was like the worst shooting game I've seen DeMar have in months.
Yeah.
I mean, this was really just horrendous. And DeJounte Murray 0 for 7.
Yeah.
Gets 2 early fouls in the game. I think it completely throws him off the rhythm. But even in the second half, he still wasn't getting around to it.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it. He got those 2 fouls within the first couple minutes of the game and came out early, and he could just never get into a rhythm after that. And I think it kind of underscores how important he is for this Spurs team. When he's on, the past 2 games he's played really well. Spurs have won, and in this one, pretty much a dud for him. And
yeah, I mean, it's tough to even say any. The problem was it more so threw off rotations than anything when you have to do that. I mean, Rudy Gay looked like the best offensively, and he went 4 of 11 from the field for 14 points. That's a problem when we're pointing to him. Patty really wasn't doing his thing. Bryn got a couple shots off early. And
Patty was like 2 of 9 from 3.
Yeah.
He started 2 for 2, and it was all downhill from there.
The Spurs were only down 6 entering halftime, and a lot of that was because they were hitting 3 balls. They were shooting 34%. They were shooting 34%, but made 8 3-pointers in the process. Then the third quarter comes along, they go 0 for 10 from deep.
Right.
So you pair up terrible shooting from inside and outside the arc, and you're pretty much screwed.
And then I think I heard you say lazy defense, terrible defense might have been uttered at some point in
It
time
was like
too,
a snowballing
yeah.
effect. It's one of those things where, and let me also say this was probably the last time that we watched a game where we knew the Spurs weren't going to win, was the Lakers game in the beginning of this Rodeo Road Trip. But that was competitive. It was just the Spurs didn't necessarily play a bad game versus the Lakers playing an awesome game, and the Spurs' best effort is not even going to beat the Lakers at their best effort. The last time we watched a game like this was the Clippers at home when it was an absolute blowout. Rarely have we really seen the Spurs kind of throw up a dud. And so, I really don't know how much weight to put in this. I think that ultimately they weren't getting any shots to fall. The defense couldn't sustain itself over time, and then the lack of offense is pissing everybody off, and then that trickles onto the other side of the ball, and then eventually it just kept slipping and sliding to the point where I think the players just kind of mailed it in. I mean, they just had nothing, and they couldn't fix it. They couldn't fix it on the fly.
It gets to the point where once you've already let go of the rope, if you grab it, it's already moving way too fast. You're going to mess your hands up. But one thing we saw, we saw the main guys kind of lose that fire in that third quarter when it became clear that there was no way the Spurs were going to win this game. But then what that meant was we got to see some of the young guys in the fourth quarter of this game. We got extended garbage time.
It's the most we've seen of Keldon Johnson in a long time.
That is a nice benefit, is that Greg Popovich was able to play Keldon Johnson in, I don't want to say meaningful minutes, but over a good amount of time, because he hasn't seen him outside of maybe 1 or 2 minutes at the very, very end of the game.
And he looked great.
Yeah, I think, Tom, you tweeted that you thought maybe this was going to be a push for him to get more into the rotation, or he was showing that he was deserving
Yeah, he was making the case for himself. He had, I think, 9 points in limited minutes.
Yeah.
And the thing that impressed me most, though, wasn't that he was getting buckets. It was, I think he had more dives on the floor for loose balls than he had buckets, and he got a good amount of buckets. So that's what he's going to bring to the floor every single time he plays, whether it's in San Antonio or in Austin. He brings a level of intensity that this Spurs team kind of has been lacking all year.
There wasn't a lot of excitement to take away from this one, but man, I saw a glimpse of the future there in the fourth quarter. DeJounte Murray gets a steal. He hops into the lane, picks off Chris Paul, I believe, and takes it down the court, and Keldon Johnson's running alongside right next to him. He dishes to Johnson, goes up for the dunk. Just a thing of beauty. And I'm looking forward to seeing that on the Spurs in the next few years here.
And I will say this, I do not want to overemphasize, the garbage time. But to Keldon's credit, and we had Keldon, Mezzi, and Lonnie in, along with DeJounte. We were like Derek White off from just being super stoked.
Right. But you know who was in there instead of Derek White?
We got Marco. And honestly, Marco, outside of an air ball, he looked fine. He did.
He hit shots, but it was so funny to me at least because he hasn't played in weeks because of the All-Star break, and I think mentally he was just like, you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna shoot as many times as I touch the ball,
and
maybe more somehow.
Most of the shots when they're all out there.
That's what it seemed like, and obviously Marco's shot selection is not why they lost this game, but it still drives me insane every single time I see him pull up from 20 feet.
Yeah, and I think that's just Popovich thrown into a game because pretty much Marco ain't playing anymore in meaningful minutes. But even beyond that, you go to talking about Keldon a little bit. I said this NBA comp for a while, just in some of the stuff that I've seen in Austin, and when he fills out Corey Maggette, he has a very Corey Maggette feel to him. He's going to drive, create his own shots, but then on top of that, he's not really a great perimeter player, more so speaking beyond the arc. He can't really shoot threes right now. Hopefully Chip can get him a little bit fixed up in that area. That would really, I think, take his game to the next level and where his ceiling could be. But he is a bucket getter. Sometimes, you have dudes that you look at the box score at the end of games and you're just like, holy crud, when did he put up 20?
I missed that.
That's a Keldon Johnson type guy. He's going to score his points. So really his offensive game is not what I'm worried about trickling over into the NBA. His defensive game is certainly not what I'm worried about either. It's just more so his fit on this team. Again, he really is, and I have a Corey Maggette comp, but when it comes to the Spurs team, he really does the same things that DeMar DeRozan does. So are you going to run the same high-usage type offense with the first unit and second unit if you put Keldon in? Essentially, you have to assign a role to Keldon, which is just like, hey, we need you to sort of limit yourself in this little niche and do that well. And it's sort of kind of where Lonnie's living right now. I'm going to say I'm a little concerned with where Lonnie's going offensively. Defensively, he's great, and he's been providing a spark there. And he does a little things here and there without scoring that helps. But it's hard to argue that Lonnie is kind of moving on a downward trajectory with his percentages, with his offensive confidence. The jumper's not quite there, and maybe that's just getting into a longer season as well. But that is something to watch down the line. Is just Lonnie's kind of pooping out here.
Yeah, I mean, what Lonnie does that I think Keldon doesn't do yet is the off-ball stuff. Moving around, doing the cuts, the screens, and that's just something Keldon's going to get with time as he gels with this rotation, figures things out. I like the Corey Maggette comp. He's a poor man's Russell Westbrook right now. I think in my mind, he's got the perimeter shooting of Russell Westbrook right now.
Yeah, he just can't, and that's I would have said DeMar DeRozan, but Keldon also isn't a great facilitator. That's another thing he's really got to work on as well. He was, in the limited role that he had there at Kentucky, he never really racked up dimes. He doesn't really do it in Austin as well. But he gets rebounds. The effort is always there. He can play great defense, and he's going to get you buckets. Those are really the top four things.
We've talked about this on the podcast before, but it's tough to get a good comp for Keldon Johnson because, he played so differently at Kentucky. He played so differently from that to Austin. And then what he does in San Antonio, what he's expected to do in San Antonio is completely different than his role in Austin, where he's basically the primary facilitator, or the primary initiator of the offense. And we got a question before the show, should he play more? What do you guys think about that?
I mean, at this point in time, if they're not going to make the playoffs, get these young guys in more. Get more Šamanić in there, too. We haven't seen him play, any. So get Keldon in there, Šamanić, Walker minutes,
and here's the thing. Look, I would like Keldon to find some sort of role defensively. I think that he could be somebody you throw out there in limited spurts. Playing more, I guess that the question's really, should he play, because there is no more.
Right.
But, I lean towards, let's see. Yes, I think there is a role to be had. I haven't had time to really think about how you would run the rotations with him and who you would pair up. I think there's something to be said there. It's a little tough for fans to swallow right now that Bryn Forbes is piping hot from beyond the arc. I mean, he's shooting, after today, he's going to be around, 49% from deep in this month alone. Yeah. So they're going to ride him out. The next 13 games, 9 of them are at home. And I said, the target record after those 13 games has to be 9-4. That brings you back to 33-36 with 13 games to go. You're sort of on the precipice of getting to 500. I think that's right around where the 8th seed is going to end up. You have a couple games against New Orleans here, which you're going to have to win. Dallas is going to come up in your schedule. I think 6 of the 13 coming up are playoff teams, and some of them are middling Eastern Conference playoff teams. So this is really the determining stretch where we will make the final decisions on the last 15 or so games, when the Spurs should mail it in, bring up the guys from Austin and say, look, we gotta figure out what we're doing for next year. Well, but they're not there yet.
You've mentioned on the pod that finishing the Rodeo Road Trip with 2 wins would be, kind of a sign of, that's okay. You live with that.
3 was sort of like the golden mark.
Yeah.
2 was you can survive.
Yeah. Right.
Now you're in a position where you have to go on a 9-4 stretch, something really the Spurs have not sniffed this entire year. So we're asking a team to do something they just have not been able to do. But if you're feeling really down about this game, just remember, this has been the whole season. Spurs fans have just been kind of riding these waves of getting way too emotional after losses and then thinking that hope is back there after wins. 2 days ago we were hyped and jacked up about beating Utah in Utah, and so you can't necessarily run with one line of thinking and then also run the other way when the other thing happens. You just have to, right now, whatever has happened, and you have 26 games or whatever it is, and it's just 9-4. That's now how you have to think. Next 13 games, it's a 13-game season. Yeah. That's really where it is.
Right now, Spurs are 24-32. Mm-hmm. Obviously not good. No. Just objectively speaking, not that great.
Not an ideal record.
No. But there is still more than just a glimmer of hope that they're going to figure this out and make the playoffs. We saw Jaren Jackson Jr. today. Mm-hmm. The Grizzlies announced he'll be out for at least 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And you've been talking about how that Grizzlies team, because they're so young, because they're not used to the grind of an 82-game NBA regular season.
No pun intended with grit and grind.
But they, I believe the term you've used is poop out. You think they're going to poop out a little bit.
And not to mention they have the toughest schedule remaining.
Right.
Yeah.
I've always said this, that the Grizz aren't really the team that you got to look up to them right now, but the team that you have to watch are the Pelicans and the Blazers, depending on when Lillard gets back. But those are your 2 teams. I would put my money on one of those 2 teams making the 8th seed right now if you had to tell me out of all 4 teams knowing what we know now. That's sort of where it's at. So there's a chance to be had here, but they got to go on a run.
Yeah. Right, and they have to do it right now.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're in jeopardy of kind of ending a 22-year streak of making the playoffs under Greg Popovich, and that puts the questions forward then on the future, which we've talked about a lot here, and what the moves are to be made. I think over the stretch of these final games, it's going to be a balance of figuring out that future, figuring out whether or not you can make the playoffs, and there's going to be some answers to be had here pretty soon.
And this is a point, and this will be my last point that I make. I've been seeing this a lot on Twitter recently. And the tanks are coming out. And let me just tell you this in perspective, all right? And I get fans are emotional. I'm not emotional. I'm just a very pragmatic
You're
kind
from
of
New
guy.
York, yeah.
I'm very loud.
You're just loud.
No, yeah. Well, okay, New Yorkers really aren't pragmatic, by the way. Can't say what they would usually say. But here's the thing, and here's where I want to put you in perspective, and just root for your team is what I'm trying to say here, all right? Right now, the Spurs are too far away from legitimately tanking, actually being in a good probability for the top 3 seed. Now, we saw Memphis get number 2 last year, which was a pretty big surprise. The Pelicans got 1.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that it's a non-zero chance that the Spurs can work themselves into a top 3 pick, but look, the probabilities are not in your favor to get a top 3 pick. Understand that right now. 2, it's a weaker draft. So we're really talking about a difference of 5 picks. I mean, you're really, like, if you're asking for the Spurs to tank, they probably end up around 10. I think like at best 9. Like if they really go south, and like the other teams that are going to go south too with you, when they're also realizing that their season's over, like they're probably going to get around 9. And the best case scenario for Spurs fans is to get the 8th seed, which would probably put them at the 16th overall pick when they, eventually don't win the series against the Lakers. So you're talking about a difference of 5 or 6 picks. Like, relax, enjoy basketball, man. It's like enjoy your team, root for your team, and if it doesn't work out, which is the probability that is right in front of us, then it won't work out. And then we'll talk about the lottery, and we'll get into all that stuff. The tank will happen organically. You don't have to root for the tank. They're doing a good job at losing right now. So just root for your team, hope that they make the playoffs, understand that if they do, it's going to be an exciting finish to the season. And if they don't, then it is what it is, and you're happy. And
to piggyback off of that, I think one of the most destructive things, why national NBA ratings are down, why are fans not as engaged as before, it's because it's been beaten into our heads that, championship or bust. And I think it's important for fans, not just in San Antonio, but all around the basketball world, to realize that not every year is going to end in a championship. And I can almost guarantee that this year the Spurs will not win the NBA title. I'm like 80% sure that won't happen. But that doesn't mean that we can't have fun watching this team and rooting for this team.
I mean, national viewership is down across the league there, but the Spurs still lead in local viewership, which is really important. And I mean, I don't think people are as stressful, as depressing as, I guess tonight it was nauseating would be the word I use, to watch the Spurs. People are still watching.
But I know that we're not the only ones that were watching the 4th quarter of this blowout just stoked about Keldon Johnson and Chimezie Metu. And shout out to all of you diehards out there. This is for you guys.
And just look, in sports, no matter what, you ride and you die with your team. That's why I'm just not a big, negative Nancy in these scenarios. Like, I'm a Mets fan. I mean, dude, I ride and die, and it's a pathetic roller coaster. But
you've been dying your whole life.
I've been dying my whole damn life. And Jerry's Familia is still on the dang team. But nonetheless, you just look. You watch the games, you root for your team, you support your team. That's the best thing you can do, because when you do that, the support's there, the players feel that, and then that positive energy just kind of recirculates. So just understand that the young players will play. The season's not over, and the Spurs are not going to kick a 22-year playoff streak, one of the best in professional history, to the curb until that is officially right in front of us. Not a probability. And I would say, if you're looking for a time to look at the G Leaguers when they could be coming up, 15 games left in the season, maybe 13 games if this next 13 goes south. Like the final 13 is really where I think you got to rebrand your efforts if you don't go 9-4 and you end up going 6-7 or something.
So if Spurs fans are looking for a positive note here to wrap up on, at least it's the end of the Rodeo Road Trip. The team gets to come home. They're playing Dallas. Is that game Tuesday, I believe? Wednesday. They're playing the Dallas Mavericks. Luka is in the building. Luka Doncic, not Luka Shamanich. He probably won't be there.
Short Luka.
Short Luka. Good Luka, I'd say. But
hey,
more established
Luka with the step back
Luka.
three. I want to see Shamanich hit the step back 3, and then we'll
we can down the road we'll break down sort of the youngsters, and we can break down more of our optimism about a guy like Lucas Shamanich, even though we all are watching Brandon Clark go off for the Grizzlies, and that's the thing. But Shamanich, he's got some skills. I'm excited for him, but he's raw, so you just got to be patient.
Yeah, they'll hone him in, and we'll be honing in all the Spurs coverage on Kins5.com, the Kins5 app, on Facebook, on Twitter. That's at Real Tom Petrini, at Evan Klosky. I'm at Jackson Floyd. Evan, you're going to be in the 10 p.m. tonight.
That's right. So we're going to.
You got to go.
Yeah, we're going to update this game for you. Kins5, 10 o'clock. We'll kind of quickly breeze by the first 3 quarters, and then we'll also give you the highlights of Keldon and Mezzi. They had a good 12 minutes of action there in the 4th. Some really good things. So we're going to spotlight the positives while quickly going through the negatives.
Yeah.
Doing our due diligence.
Forgot to touch on the Chimezie Metu heat check 3 he took there. You love to see it, right?
Yeah, he's a better three-point shooter than that. You don't see that in the highlight clips from Austin.
No, they clip those out for whatever reason. But he shot 4 of 4 before that and just ran through a guy like a Mack truck. So those young guys, they fight, and anytime they get minutes, they are trying to prove that they're worthy of a bigger role.
What's funny is, and quickly, because we didn't really talk about Metu, but Metu was ran through Nerlens Noel, and I think that's like he's a bit rangier of a player than Nerlens. But if you're talking about maybe a comp, like I always thought, like Metu to Noel, the only difference is that Metu can actually hit an outside shot, where Noel's kind of stuck there. But Noel might be a better shot blocker. But regardless, that's sort of my comp there. If you're looking for a comparison,
I can see it. Yeah, look for more of Evan's comparisons and his notes on the game tonight at 10 p.m. on Ken's 5, Channel 5 here in San Antonio. Last thoughts, Tom, from you.
Only one. Follow @BigFunPod on Twitter.
Yes.
Because your boy's tweeting from it.
He was running the game blog, following the tweets there.
He got a Big Fun shirt as well. This is what we love about him.
I just realized that this shirt reminds me of my Nana's couch.
Okay.
But, honestly, I'm rocking it. I feel great.
There you go. Okay, we'll dress like your grandmother's couch next time here on the Big Fun post-game show. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Go and hit that same button.
We're getting quickly and go ahead and hit that.